Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today in this video, I'm going to go through some information to help you choose oils for soap making. This is a really important subject and this video has been brewing for me for quite some time. A lot of you ask me these questions a lot and I probably should have done it earlier, but it's a really big subject and it took a lot of preparation and gearing up for me to get here. So thank you for your patience. I really hope this is a good, thorough resource for you though, and should give you all the basic information you need and a whole lot more confidence in putting together your soap recipes. So I'm going to go over the 8 most common fatty acids found in oils and fats that are used in soap making. And I'm going to go through each one of those in terms of whether or not they're saturated or unsaturated fat, what the lathering ability is like once they're made into soap, the cleansing properties, the hardness and longevity properties of each fatty acid when they're made into soap, the speed of saponification, because that can impact on the kinds of soaps we want to make, and some examples of the oils that are high in each of these fatty acids. Then I'm going to have a bit of a look through what actually makes the best soap then, so what fatty acid combinations and what you want to think about when you're designing your soap recipe, and some other factors, so what else is important, because it's not all just about making the best soap. There are other things that I think we need to be thinking about when we're sourcing oils for our soap making. And then finally, I'm going to have a look at an example in Soapcalc and explain to you what all of those things in Soapcalc mean. You know, hardness, creamy, bubbly, cleansing, conditioning, all that sort of stuff. I'm going to explain what that means and that will give you confidence then to fully understand your soap recipes when you put them in Soapcalc. I've got some further reading and resources as well, which I'll just point you to, and that will be it. These are the main fatty acids found in oils and fats used in soap making: Lauric Acid, Myristic Acid, Palmitic Acid, Stearic Acid, Linoleic Acid, and I hope I'm saying these right, Oleic Acid, Linoleic and Linolenic. Make sure you don't get those last two mixed up. They're similar but different. Linoleic and Linolenic. The first one, lauric acid, it's a saturated fatty acid, and most saturated fatty acids are the types of solid fats that are hard or solid, they're not liquid, at moderate to cool room temperatures. In hot climates, saturated fatty acids may be liquid or very soft at room temperature, but they're usually the more solid types of fats. Lauric acid contributes a really abundant, big, fluffy lather to soap recipes, and it is quite strong cleansing. So when you talk about the cleansing abilities of fatty acids in soap making, strong or high cleansing values, that means the soap it's a really good cleaner and it can be very stripping and a bit drying. So that's important to know about lauric acid. Lauric acid also makes a pretty hard bar of soap, but very soluble. So hardness when you first make a bar of soap, or even when you're using it, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to last very long. So hardness and longevity are important to understand the distinction. Lauric acid makes hard but soluble soap. It's fast saponifying, so it sets up quite fast when you're making soap high in lauric acid. And some examples are coconut oil, palm kernel oil, so not palm oil. Palm oil is the oil from the inner fruit, the very central part of the palm fruit. Palm kernel oil is from the kernel around the palm fruit. Babassu oil, laurel oil, and also the fat found in cow and goat and human breast milk. They're all high in lauric fatty acid. The next one is myristic acid, and it has some properties that are similar to lauric acid, and they're often found in combination. It's another saturated fatty acid that also contributes a really big, abundant, fluffy lather to soap recipes. It's also strongly cleansing, so soaps made that are high in myristic acid can also be drying. It also makes a very hard but highly soluble soap, and it's also fast saponifying. And no surprise, some of the same oils, all of the same oils that are high in lauric acid also have myristic acid in them. Coconut oil, palm oil, babassu oil, cow and goat milk fat, they're just some examples. Be aware though that in all of this, most oils and fats for soap making, they have a combination of all of these fatty acids in them. There aren't many, there's only one where one fatty acid dominates, and that's castor oil, and we get to that. But just be aware that most oils and fats are actually a blend of these acids. The next is palmitic acid, and that is one of the most common saturated fatty acids found in many plant and animal fats. It contributes a moderate and stable creamy lather to soap recipes. It's moderately cleansing, so it'll have some good cleansing qualities, but it won't be too harsh and drying. It makes a very hard and long-lasting soap, and it's pretty fast saponifying as well. Palm oil is probably one of the most common examples of soap making oil that's high in palmitic acid, and you can see the name palmitic. It's probably come from palm oil. So palm oil, not palm kernel, but palm fruit oil. Tallow, so beef fat. Lard, which is pork fat. Other animal tallows. Emu oil, cocoa butter, shea butter, lots of the butters are high in palmitic acid as well. So those are some examples. And palmitic acid is a really great fatty acid to try and get in your soap recipes if you can, because it does provide that nice hardness and longevity, with also some nice cleansing and lathering properties as well. It's a great one. The next is stearic acid, which is another saturated fatty acid. Stearic acid contributes a low and creamy lather to your soap recipes, and it's low cleansing, so it makes mild soap. It does contribute to a hard and long-lasting bar of soap though, and it's fast saponifying. Stearic acid is found in high amounts, mostly in the butters. So cocoa butter, sal butter, cocoa butter, shea butter, mango butter, and also things like hydrogenated soy oil or soy wax. It's very high in stearic acid as well. Stearic acid is often found in oils and fats in combination with palmitic acid. Those two often do come together in different fats, so that's good to know. Next we have the really unique one, ricinoleic acid. Ricinoleic acid is the first on our list of the unsaturated fatty acids, and it's an omega-9 and hydroxy acid. Don't ask me what that means. That's what Wikipedia told me. Ricinoleic acid contributes a low and creamy lather, and it is thought to assist the lather in soap recipes because it has some ability to act as a solvent. So it increases some solubility in the soap recipe, which can boost the lather a little bit. And if you think about lauric and myristic acid, those first two we talked about, they have the biggest lather of all, but also very soluble soap. So increasing the solubility of the soap, which means it doesn't last long, often soaps with high solubility will have a better lather. So it makes sense that this ricinoleic acid, because of its solvent properties, it boosts the lather a little bit. Ricinoleic acid contributes low cleansing properties, so it's makes mild soap. It also makes a really soft, sticky soap in large amounts, and it's slow to saponify. Now, castor oil, that's what we're talking about here. It's the only oil that has, to my knowledge, ricinoleic acid, and 90% of the fatty acids in castor oil are ricinoleic acid. So that's really what we're talking about here. And yeah, it's really good to know that the castor oil, often people put castor oil in their soap recipes in small amounts because it has the ability to act as a solvent, and it does boost the lather a little bit in soap recipes. Next, we have one that's very dear to my heart, oleic acid. Oleic acid is a monounsaturated fatty acid that doesn't have a very spectacular lather, but it is low cleansing, which means it contributes to the mildness in a soap recipe. Oleic acid in high amounts in soap can make a hard soap, and Castile soap, which is 100% olive oil, it's a great example. A well-made Castile soap can be absolutely rock hard when you make it. The ones that I make they're really, really hard. But once you get to use them in the shower, they're very soluble. And we all know that Castile soap can have that gooiness, which a lot of my soap recipes on this channel, especially my early ones, they're very, very high in oleic acid because it's very mild. And if you've got sensitive skin, having lots of oleic acid in your soap recipe can be great. And my skin just loves it, which is why I use olive oil a lot, but it does make a gooey kind of soluble soap. It's also slow saponifying, so lots of soap makers love to have oleic acid in their soap recipes, especially if they're doing really lovely designs and they want their soap to trace slowly and saponify slowly. You won't get a soap that sets up too fast if you use a fair amount of oleic fatty acid in your recipe. So some common examples of oils that are high in oleic acid. Well, olive oil isn't the highest actually, but I put it at the top of the list. It's the most obvious one, especially in context of my recipes that I make. Sweet almond oil, apricot kernel oil, canola or rapeseed oil, macadamia nut oil, avocado oil, peanut oil, rice bran oil, neem oil, and high oleic sunflower and safflower oils. They're all great examples of soap making oils, those liquid unsaturated oils that are high in oleic acid. Next we have linoleic acid, which is a polyunsaturated omega-6 fatty acid. It contributes a low silky lather to soap recipes. It's also low cleansing. You'll find that a lot of the unsaturated oils, like the liquid oils, they often give more mild qualities to soap recipes. Linoleic acid in high amounts creates a soft soap, and it's also slow to saponify. The other thing that to be aware of with linoleic acid is that it has a shorter shelf life. And also what comes along with that sometimes is a proneness to DOS, which stands for dreaded orange spots. You know, those spots that you get, which no soap maker wants. Unfortunately, DOS is something that you're more prone to get with linoleic fatty acid. So these are the oils that are reasonably high in linoleic acid: sunflower oil, safflower oil, grapeseed oil, cottonseed oil, soybean oil, hemp seed oil, corn oil, sesame oil, and wheat germ oil. There would be more, but those are some of the main examples that soap makers use. And finally, we have linolenic acid. Linolenic is another polyunsaturated fatty acid, which is an omega-6 or an omega-3 fatty acid. It also has a low, and some people think it contributes to a silkiness to the lather. It's also low cleansing, so it makes a mild soap, a soft soap also, and it's slow saponifying. Sorry about the little birdies outside. Sometimes get some bird noises coming into my videos. Like linoleic acid, linolenic fatty acid also has a shorter shelf life, and also if used in high amounts in soap can make the soap more prone to dreaded orange spots, so be aware of that. Hemp seed oil, walnut oil, and linseed or flaxseed oil are really high in linolenic acid, so those are some examples. So I've gone through the 8 fatty acids and talked a little bit about their properties in soap recipes. So what do we do with that then? What makes the best soap? Well, in my opinion, and most soap makers, they try and look for a blend. And ideally, the ideal soap recipe has a blend of all of those qualities. We want some lather in our soap. We want some mildness and some gentleness. But most of us want a soap that has got some hardness and some longevity to it as well. So we're looking to achieve a balance in these qualities when we're putting our soap recipes together in Soapcalc or whatever soap calculator we use. If you're looking for a really big lather and the lather is really important to you in your soaps, then you want to have some lauric and myristic. You want to have some coconut oil or some palm kernel oil or babassu oil or whatever oil you can get that has those qualities. But remember, lauric and myristic acid, they also come with high cleansing, which can be drying for some skin types, and also high solubility. So really high lauric and myristic acid soaps aren't going to last very long. They're going to be quite soluble. If you're wanting to achieve a more stable, moderate kind of a lather with also the longevity and the hardness properties, you really want to be paying attention to the palmitic and stearic acid amounts in your soap recipe. I've got their ricinoleic associated with stable lather. So ricinoleic, the castor oil, it can be a nice contributor to some creaminess in the lather in some soap recipes as well. But really a nice stable lather and the hardness and longevity, palmitic and stearic acid are the ones to look out for. To make sure that your soaps have some nice mild cleansing qualities, you want to pay attention to oleic, linoleic and linolenic fatty acids, in particular oleic, because remember the linolenic and linoleic fatty acids, they have the issues with shelf life and DOS. So oleic primarily, I think, but also palmitic, stearic and ricinoleic. If you've got a nice blend of oleic with some palmitic and stearic there, they're not really harshly cleansing oils, so they will contribute to mildness in the soap as well. Just remember, as I already said, with linoleic and linolenic, you do get mildness, but they do have a shorter shelf life and DOS can be an issue. And also other things like the superfat level, the water type and other additives, sugars and salts, they all can impact on your soap recipe a lot as well. I'm not going to go into those things in depth, but I'll take superfat for an example. You've probably seen my 100% coconut oil soap for bathing. So 100% coconut oil soap is very, very high in lauric and myristic acids. It would normally, with a low superfat, it would normally be an extremely high cleansing, possibly quite harsh and drying soap. But in that recipe, I used a 25% superfat. So having a really large superfat for a coconut oil soap or a palm oil kernel soap, soaps that are high in lauric and myristic acid, that high superfat can counteract some of that harshness in the soap. So that's just one example. Water type, if you've got really hard water, that's going to inhibit the lather of your soap. If you're adding lots of sugars, sugars will help the lather of your soap. Salts will increase hardness of the soap, but they will inhibit the lather a little bit. So, you'll have to do your own research about all of those things, and I might get to do videos on those things down the track. But have a little Google and ask those questions about what different additives and what impact they can have in your soap recipes. I'll also put a link below to an article from Kenna from Modern Soap Making. It's absolutely fantastic. She did a survey of fatty acid usage rates amongst her audience and her readership on her website, and it's really interesting. You get a real idea of what most soap makers are looking for in their soap recipe formulations. So have a look at that. I'll put the link in the description box. I will put lots of links in the description box in this video, so please make sure you check those out. Reading and research, doing your own research is really, really important in soap making. You'll get lots of little bits of information from all sorts of people, especially if you're watching YouTube videos, but really the responsibility is on you to check everything. I've done lots of checking when I put this video together, so it should give you a good basic understanding of it all, but there's no substitute for spending the time to do your own research as well and taking your knowledge a bit further. And what else is important when you're choosing oils for soap making? I think some of these things are really important, if not more important than, what the actual soap will come out like. Well, no, it's nice to have good soap that you're happy with, but these things are important. So firstly, what do you actually have available to you? You know, all around the world, people are going to have access to different oils and fats. And I truly believe that the best thing to do is to find what is produced in your country at least. So you're trying not to import too much materials for your soap making. Do you have an oil that is produced in abundance locally, that's affordable and is sustainably produced? You know, coconut oil in southern India and Sri Lanka and countries in that region, that's a great example. If I was living in southern India, I would be making, it's particularly in Kerala, and hello to everybody in South India, I would be having lots of coconut oil in my soap recipes because they produce coconut oil in abundance. So it would be wise to use that. So you'd be looking at higher super fats, and you'd be trying to maybe mix it with some oils that are high in palmitic or stearic acids, other things to try and, counteract the solubility of coconut oil soap. But really, it does make sense to use what you have available to you. Also, affordability, that can be a really big factor for most of us. I know for me, for a long time, I just bought the cheapest olive oil I could get at the supermarket because I was so focused on frugality and making my money go as far as I possibly could. And, trying to balance the budget is a hard thing sometimes. So affordability is important. The only thing I would say about that, and I certainly make no judgments about anybody and what choices they make. We all have to make our own decisions on this. But something that's been coming more to my awareness these days is thinking about cheap products. Am I just shifting the cost to somebody else? Am I paying a fair price for the products that I'm buying? Is somebody else paying the cost of that? Is the farmer getting paid well enough for the oils that they're producing? If I'm getting it for a really cheap price, does that mean they're not getting enough for it? Are there other issues along the supply chain like that? Also, environmental costs. Sometimes the cheapest products, they might be cheap for me to buy, but is that at a cost to the environment? Are they affordable because they're produced in a way that is very cheap and comes with some dubious environmental practices associated with it? Palm oil and deforestation is a really important one. Palm oil is produced in Malaysia and Indonesia and India, South America in really large amounts. And I think if you live in a region where palm oil is produced and you know that you can get a sustainable source, it makes excellent soap. And lots of people love palm oil in their soap because it's just makes beautiful quality soap. It has all that palmitic and stearic acid in it, which we want. But palm oil production, not so much for us home and hobby soap makers, but for all of the processed food products on our supermarket shelves and lots of commercial cosmetic products that are sold around the world, palm oil is in so many things. There's such a high demand for it that it has created a real environmental problem that our planet, unfortunately, is being deforested at a really rapid rate because of not just palm oil, but producing things like palm oil is causing that. It's a big problem. So think about that. Carbon emissions and trade inequities with imported products is important to think about. How far is your oil traveling to get to you? You might be on one side of the planet and your oil has to travel, a long way to get to you. So there's lots of potential environmental issues just with travel costs and carbon emissions, that sort of thing. And trade inequities, I already mentioned that, is the producer getting paid a fair price for the product that you're buying? I'm by no means perfect in this area and I'm still learning. I've got a lot to learn, but I think we all have a responsibility to try and think about this stuff more. Your question might be, are you prepared or are you okay with using animal fats in your soap? You know, if palm oil is out of the question for you, do you have a local source of beef tallow or lard that, you know, do you know a farmer who's raising their animals well and caring for them that you could buy some animal fat from and render it yourself to make tallow for soap making? That might be a better option than palm oil if you're looking for those high palmitic stearic acid properties in your soap recipes. You know, have a think about that. And also packaging. You know, the soap oils that you buy, how are they packaged? Are they packaged reasonably? Can you buy them in bulk with the minimal amount of packaging possible just to reduce waste? These are just some of the ideas that I've been thinking about. And finally, your personal preferences really come into it as well. Probably most of you know, if you've seen any of my early YouTube videos, my soap recipes are nearly always quite high in olive oil. I do really love it. I just fell in love with Castile soap actually, and Marseille soap from France, the whole tradition behind it when I first started soap making. So I've got this huge bias towards olive oil soap. But, you know, if you're living in southern India or Sri Lanka or somewhere in that part of the world, or anywhere, you know, in Southeast Asia where it's tropical, olive oil might not be very available to you, or could be really expensive, but B, it's not going to make very good soap for your climate. It's going to be extra soggy, you know, in high humidity, which is why I don't use it in summer. I only use my olive oil, my 100% olive oil soaps in winter, because that's our dry season, and the soap can actually work quite well here when it's dry, but when it's high humidity in summer here, 100% olive oil soap is a nightmare. So think about seasons too. I don't know many other people who do this with their soap recipes, but I change my soap recipes according to the seasons to get the best out of the olive oil soap in the winter when it's okay to use, but in summer when we've got really high humidity, because it's the subtropics, it's quite okay to use soaps that have got a bit more of the Lauric and Myristic, you know, coconut oil soaps that might be a bit more drying. My skin doesn't feel it in the summer because it's high humidity anyway. So have a think about that as well. Before I wrap things up in the video, I just want to take some time to go through what Soapcalc means. When you put your information into a soap calculator, it usually gives you some ideas of some of the qualities that the soap bar will have, but different soap calculators mean different things, and we don't always know what they mean by hardness, cleansing, conditioning, that sort of thing. So I would like to acknowledge Deanna Weed from classicbells.com for support with all of this information. Everything that I have learned on this subject has come from her. She's written about this in depth on her website, and I will link to her articles below. So thanks very much for that. It's really good to understand this. I didn't know this before I did all the research for this video. So if you look at the red box below, this is my coffee soap recipe that I've just loaded in. You may or may not have seen the video for that. I'll put a link to that below as well. I put this in just an example and then took a little screen grab of the final recipe so I could show you. So down the bottom, you see the final outcome. So Soapcalc gives you a suggested range. So that middle green column gives you the range. They say that your recipe, you know, suggests that it should be within those ranges. And you can see the third green column down the bottom, your recipe. That shows me that this recipe is quite well balanced in fatty acid, in the fatty acid profile, and all of my ranges are within the Soapcalc suggestions. So we'll just go through what these all mean though, because there's some good things to know about this. So hardness in Soapcalc is calculated on the basis of how much lauric, myristic, palmitic and stearic acids are in the soap recipe, which makes sense because they all make hard soap. But just be aware that you might have a soap that's really high in lauric and myristic, for example 100% coconut oil soap, and it's going to tell you that it's a really hard soap. But remember that lauric and myristic acids, they make soluble and really highly cleansing soap. So I think aside from this overall looking at hardness, I would actually be rather looking at palmitic and stearic, because they're the ones that give a long-lasting soap without the harsh cleansing. They're only like a moderate cleansing factor, and they also make, the soap has much better longevity than Lauric and Myristic acid soaps. Next is cleansing. So this is a funny one because a lot of people contact me and say, oh, your soap recipe, I put it in Soapcalc and it's really high in olive oil and it's got 0 cleansing. Is that still going to work? Is it going to work? And of course, the idea of Soapcalc using this word cleansing, it doesn't mean that if it's got very low or even 0 cleansing, it doesn't mean that it won't clean you. Soap is soap. Regardless of the cleansing value in Soapcalc, it's still going to lather a little bit and it's going to wash dirt off you. But the cleansing value in Soapcalc really is really about the level of cleansing and mildness or harshness. So think about low cleansing soaps are very mild, high cleansing soaps can be quite a bit harsh and can be drying. So cleansing for Soapcalc is calculated on the Lauric and Myristic, which those are the 2 fatty acids that make really high cleansing or drying soaps. So the higher the cleansing value, you're going to have a bit of a over drying soap. Look for a moderate to lower cleansing value, I think can be helpful depending on your skin type and what you need out of your soap. And the conditioning criteria for Soapcalc is calculated on the basis of oleic, linoleic, linolenic and ricinoleic acids in your soap recipe, which makes sense. All of those oils, all of those fatty acids, I should say, they all contribute to mildness in a soap. So this is really the opposite to cleansing. Just remember though that linoleic and linolenic, they're the ones that have the shorter shelf life and can be prone to DOS. So I think with conditioning you really want to be focusing on oleic. And ricinoleic, that's your castor oil. So you want to keep that in really small amounts too, because too much castor oil makes a really sticky soap and it also contributes to solubility. So just keeping that in small amounts. Oleic, I think, is the key one for conditioning, but be aware that Soapcalc is taking into consideration those other ones as well. Bubbly means, in Soapcalc, it means Lauric, Myristic and ricinoleic, which are all very soluble when made into soap. And remember also, if you've got a really high bubbly factor, it means that your soap recipe could have lots of Lauric and Myristic, which can be the high cleansing drying soap. So take that into account. And finally, creamy down the bottom. I will go into iodine and INS in the next slide, but creamy. Creamy is a combination of palmitic, stearic and ricinoleic for Soapcalc. So which are good. Creamy is a good one to look at, I think, because it's talking about lather really and the texture. But if your soap has a good creamy factor, you've probably got a fair amount of palmitic and stearic. But what I will say with all of these is really, unless you know exactly what they mean and you're looking at your fatty acids as well, they can be a bit misleading. That's the moral of this story. And I really do think that rather than looking at Soapcalc's criteria, hardness, cleansing, conditioning, bubbly, creamy, I would be looking at the blue column on the right. If you understand your fatty acids, which hopefully you do now after watching this video, you will be able to evaluate your soap recipes based on the fatty acid profile. And that, I think, is the most reliable because, as we said, hardness in Soapcalc could make a really drying soap. It might not be, depending on what combination of fatty acids you've actually got in that soap. So that's just something to bear in mind. The last 2 little things on the list there on the soap bar quality in Soapcalc are the iodine number and INS. I have to tell you, I completely ignore these 2 things. It's up to you whether or not you want to look at them. The iodine number, it is actually generated from a scientific test where iodine is reacted with the fatty acids in any oil or fat combination to determine the amount of unsaturated fat there is in that mixture. That's all that means. So a higher iodine number in your soap recipe means that you've got lots of unsaturated fats, which are usually the liquid oils, and a low iodine number means you've got lots of saturated fats. So if you really want to look at that, I would be aiming at somewhere in between, in the middle. And if you're looking at my recipe down here, you'll see under iodine, I've got 56 when the recommended range is between 41 and 70. So I've got a pretty good balance between saturated and unsaturated fats. So, that can be helpful. INS stands for iodine number saponification, and thanks again to classicbells.com for helping me to understand all of this. Please make sure you read those resources if you want to go into this deeper. But INS, stands for iodine number saponification, and it is the saponification value of the oil or the fat blend minus the iodine number. To me, that's just going much farther than I need this all to go. And really, these things were designed for commercial soap making, manufacturing. So I don't think the hobby home soap maker or even the small business soap maker really needs to know this stuff. You can look at it if you want to, but that's all they mean. And last but not least, I thought I'd just bring up these two images from Soapcalc just to give you my final little tips on what I think is the most important thing. So on the right, you've seen my coffee soap recipe there, and you can see I look at the red box down the bottom, and I look at my recipe, and I look at the range, but most of all, I'm looking at the fatty acid profile. I want to see that I've got a nice mixture of the fatty acids that I want in my soap, to see if it's well balanced. On the left, the grey box, this is just a little screen grab from the earlier page in Soapcalc. If you've used Soapcalc, you'll be familiar with what I'm talking about, and I'll put a link to it below in my other video that actually shows you how to use Soapcalc if you don't know what I'm talking about. I use this to evaluate single oils. There are other charts and things that you can use online to look at single oils in your soap recipes to get their fatty acid qualities, but I have found using a soap calculator is the best way to do it. So I've just got coconut oil here as an example. If you click on an oil in Soapcalc, it will bring up the fatty acid profile of that particular oil. And you can see here with coconut oil, if you look at the left on the bottom bit where it's got all the fatty acids, it's high in lauric, it's high in myristic, it's got a little bit of palmitic, and it's very low in all the others. And, we know that's true about coconut oil. So you can play around in Soapcalc, click your oils that you've got. Say if you're in India and you have sesame seed oil and mustard seed oil. I don't know what the qualities of those oils are, but you've got them available to you. Put them in Soapcalc and see what those qualities come out like. You might find, like rice bran oil is a great example. Rice bran oil actually has a nice little bit of palmitic acid in it. Oh, hang on, sorry, stearic. I can't remember now, but you might be surprised. Some of the liquid oils actually have some of those qualities that are found in the solid fats in them. So just explore and experiment. I just wanted to show you that so you've got a bit of an idea of how you can use the soap calculator to help you learn about the oils that you have. Well, that's the end of the presentation. I hope you have found that helpful. Just on this last page, just want to show you some further reading and resources that I mentioned in the video. Actually, I didn't mention, but Wikipedia. I love Wikipedia. When I need to know anything or it's something sciencey or technical, I look it up in Wikipedia. It's not necessarily the best source of information, but it's a good one if you don't know where else to look. You can learn things, and I think it's fairly reputable information. Kevin Dunn's book, Scientific Soap Making. All of these links will be in the description box below the video. I love that book. I found it really helpful, and it was helpful for me in putting together, and doing the research for this video as well. The Classic Bells website is an absolute winner, and thank you to Deanna. I don't know if she'd ever get to see this, but if she does, thank you. I appreciate your knowledge and your generosity in sharing it very much. Those two articles there, I'll put links below. The Love and Soap Studio oils chart, it's really cool. It's got an interactive oils chart, so you can filter their chart by fatty acid profile, so you can pick oils. You can play around with all the different oils and filter out and order things and by their fatty acid qualities. It's really fun to play around with. I've shared that link with a lot of people over the years. Modern Soap Making, that article by Kenna about the most popular fatty acid profiles in soap making, that's a really interesting read. And also I'll also put a link to my webpage where I list the main soap calculators that I recommend. Soapcalc is just what I'm in the habit of using, but there are other soap calculators that others prefer. You might want to have a look at what else is available. And thank you, everybody. That's it. I hope that was useful to you. Please share it with others if you think it might be helpful to them. I know it was quite a chunky video, but these are pretty big subjects. And a lot of the time when people start a new hobby, particularly soap making, just want to get in there quick and, get excited and we want to make the soap. But if you want to be able to formulate your own recipes and make good recipes, you do, unfortunately, we have to take the time to learn these things and absorb all this information and process it. So I appreciate you being here. If you've watched all the way to the end, thank you so much. And if anybody is interested in providing some more support to me and my videos, you can do that in a few ways. You can like and comment and share this video if you want to, but if you would like to make a donation to support my work, that's always welcome too. You can do that at buymeacoffee.com/ElliesEveryday, and I'll put a link to that in the description box below. Thank you to everybody who's been buying me coffees and helping me. Every little bit helps to keep me here working from home, making videos for you all, which I do love so much. Thanks everyone. Take care and enjoy your soap formulating. I really hope you have fun with it. Bye. See you in the next video.